Welcome to Class 2 of Beginning Meditation. As I discussed in the first class, it's important to take this course sequentially. If you have not taken Class 1, please do so before taking this class. Also, as I mentioned, if you have questions, you can contact me through my website. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a link to the website in the description area just below the video. We'll start today's class with a guided meditation. In the first class, we brought our awareness to the breath. In today's class, we'll expand our awareness to include bodily sensations. Let's review the sitting posture. You want your hips to be above your knees. You want your spine or back straight and your chin slightly tucked. You can imagine there's a string at the top of your head. Someone's gently lifting it. In this practice, the eyes are closed, we breathe through the nose, and the mouth is closed. It's preferable not to move while you meditate. You want your body firm but soft or relaxed, and you can put your hands anywhere. As before, if you need more time, I suggest putting the video on pause and starting it again when you're situated. Let's sit. If it's helpful, start by taking a few deep breaths or doing a body scan. Once you're settled in, bring your awareness to the breath. And bring your awareness to the breath at that place where it enters and leaves the body. With your awareness on the breath, you may notice that your attention is drawn to a bodily sensation somewhere in the body, a pain, an itch, or some other bodily sensation. When that happens, bring your awareness to that bodily sensation. Bring your awareness to the characteristics of the bodily sensation, whatever arises. It may be warm, or it may be cold. It may be tight, or it may be relaxed. It may be numb, or it may be tingly. Bring your awareness to whatever characteristic arises. You can also notice how the sensation changes. Is it getting stronger? Is it getting weaker? Is it staying the same? Keep your awareness on the bodily sensation until it disappears. When that happens, bring your awareness back to the breath. You may notice that the sensation disappears as soon as you bring your awareness to it. When that happens, bring your awareness back to the breath. With your awareness on a bodily sensation, you may notice that your attention is drawn to another bodily sensation. When that happens, bring your awareness to the new bodily sensation. At any time, if your awareness is not with the breath and not with the bodily sensation, gently and with loving kindness, bring your awareness back to the breath. When you hear the sound of the bell, take your time coming out of the sit. Today's Dhamma talk is on one of my favorite subjects, the life of the Buddha and his great teaching, the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha lived 2,500 years ago. He was born in northern India. He was a prince named Siddhartha Gautama. As the story goes, when he was born, a seer came, and the seer prophesied that the prince would grow to be either a great king or a great spiritual leader. His father naturally wanted him to become a king, so he shielded him from all the grief and sorrows of the world. Whenever the prince would leave the palace, the roads were cleared of any unpleasantness the prince might encounter. The Buddha describes his life. I was delicate, most delicate, supremely delicate. Lily pools were made for me at my father's house solely for my benefit. Blue lilies flowered in one, white lilies in another, red lilies in a third. I used no sandalwood that was not from Benares. My turban, tunic, lower garments, and cloak were all made of Benares cloth. A white sunshade was held over me day and night, so that no cold or heat or dust or grit or dew might inconvenience me. I had 3 palaces, one for the winter, one for the summer, and one for the rains. In the rains palace, I was entertained by minstrels with no men among them. For the 4 months of the rains, I never went down to the lower palace. Though meals of broken rice with lentil soup are given to the servants and retainers in other people's houses, in my father's house, white rice and meat was given to them. When the prince turned 16, he married, and for the next 13 years he lived the life of a prince. He had a son, and he indulged in all the sensual pleasures. But still, the Bodhisattva, and Bodhisattva is the Pali term for someone destined to become a Buddha, but who has not yet attained Buddhahood. The Bodhisattva was unsatisfied. He was restless. Finally, one day when he was 29, he snuck out of the palace. When he did, he came upon a very old person, and he asked his driver, "What's that?" His driver replied, "That's a very old person." The prince asked, "Will that happen to me?" And the driver responded, "Yes, it happens to everyone." After this, they encountered a very sick person. And again, the Bodhisattva asked, "What's that?" The driver responded, "That's a very sick person." "Will it happen to me?" "Yes, it happens to everyone." After this, they encountered a corpse. And the prince asked, "What's that?" The driver said, "That's a dead person." "Will it happen to me?" "Yes, it happens to everyone." After this, they happened to come upon a monk. And the monk seemed carefree and happy. And the prince asked his driver, "What's that?" The driver explained, "That person has renounced the worldly life, is living the life of homelessness, is an ascetic, a monk." After this, the prince returned to the palace, and before long he made a decision. He too would renounce the worldly life and take up robes, the life of a monk, and he did. For the next 6 years, he lived the ascetic life, and he practiced under the greatest teachers of his day, and he attained the highest attainments then known. But still, he was unsatisfied. Finally, when he was 35, he sat under a Bodhi tree and he made a determination. "I'm not going to move until I see all there is to see." During the course of the night, he had many insights, and they culminated in full enlightenment. In his case, the enlightenment of a Buddha. Now after this, the Buddha wasn't sure what to do. he wasn't sure people would be ready for his teachings. It's said that a being from one of the heavenly realms saw this, came down to earth, and pleaded with the Buddha to go out and teach. And as we know, he did teach. He taught for the next 45 years. What did the Buddha teach? The Buddha taught with one purpose: the end of suffering. You end suffering by attaining nibbana. Nibbana is a Pali term for enlightenment, which is very close to the Sanskrit nirvana. When you attain nibbana, you end suffering not just in this lifetime, but according to the teachings, we're caught in a cycle of birth and rebirth called samsara. The only way to get out of the cycle is to attain nibbana. And when you do, you end suffering forever. Now let me say a word about this. I've been meditating for over 20 years, and I have doubts about the notion of birth and rebirth. I'm open to the possibility, but I'm not yet convinced. However, I have no doubt about the state of nibbana. I mentioned in the first class that when I went to Myanmar, my practice transformed. I'm no longer motivated by my back or trying to get in touch with my emotions. Now my practice is geared towards nibbana. The essence of the teachings is contained in what are known as the Four Noble Truths. Let's talk about them. The first noble truth is the truth of suffering. There is suffering, and it pervades human existence. This is what the Buddha said. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Sickness is suffering. Death is suffering. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Not to obtain what one wants is suffering. The Pali term for suffering is dukkha. And I was talking to a friend of mine about the teaching several years ago, and I realized we had very different understandings of the term suffering. When we normally talk of suffering, we're talking of intense emotional or physical pain. In the context of the teachings, suffering refers to the entire spectrum, from the smallest irritation to the greatest agony. Dukkha is sometimes translated as unsatisfactoriness, and there's a simile of an ox cart wheel. You can imagine a wheel of an ox cart. There's an axle, and it goes in, but it doesn't fit quite right. As a result, the ride is a little off, a little awry, a little unsatisfactory. Now, the teachings don't deny the existence of pleasure and joy. Joy is an important part of the practice. But with a clear understanding, you understand that even within moments of pleasure, even within moments of joy, there is suffering. There is dukkha. The second noble truth is the truth of the cause of suffering. Suffering is caused by craving. Craving includes desire, when we want something, or aversion, when we want to push something away. Craving leads to clinging, or attachment. And the Buddha identified 4 types of attachment. The first type of attachment is attachment to sensual pleasures, and we all know what that means. The second type of attachment is attachment to ideas and opinions. When I was young, I was very opinionated. I loved to argue. In fact, I liked it so much I became a lawyer. Now, one of my favorite sayings is, hold no opinions. The third type of attachment is referred to as adherence to rites and rituals, and it refers to the mistaken belief that rites and rituals in and of themselves can lead to wisdom. The fourth type of attachment is attachment to self, and not self is a very big and important concept in the teachings, and we'll get back to it in class 5. The third noble truth is the truth of the end or cessation of suffering. If suffering is caused by craving, we end suffering by letting go of craving, letting go of our attachments. If you're able to do this, you'll be free of suffering. And you may have had moments when you've experienced this. There may have been something you really wanted, like a job or something else. And at some point you realized it wasn't going to happen and you let go. When you did, there was a release, as if a weight had been lifted off your shoulders, a sense of liberation. Now, letting go is a lot easier said than done. We're conditioned to crave. We're programmed genetically, and it's reinforced by society, particularly our society, which is so materialistic. But letting go is the practice. The fourth noble truth is the path leading to the end of suffering, called the Noble Eightfold Path. The good news is there is a path leading to the end of suffering. The bad news is you'll have to wait till next class to hear it. One more week of suffering. After that, you're home free. So part of your homework last week was to bring 2 raisins or other pieces of fruit or candy to class this week. If you haven't done that, I recommend putting the video on pause and getting them. This is what I'd like you to do. Take the 2 raisins, and I'll say raisins even though for you it may be other fruit or candy, and place them in your hand. And go ahead and eat one. Now, I'll ask you to eat the second raisin mindfully. And let me show you what I mean by this. Look at the raisin. Slowly lift your hand and notice how it approaches the raisin. Notice how your 2 fingers get ready to grasp it. Notice how they grasp it. Notice how you lift it. Notice how you pull it towards your mouth. Notice how it enters your mouth. Notice the texture. Notice how you chew. Notice how your tongue might move it from side to side. Notice the taste. Notice as you swallow how it feels. So go ahead and take a minute or 2 to do this. Your homework for next class is to pick 1 meal a day and eat that meal as mindfully as you ate that raisin. I recommend eating alone because you'll want to not talk and it will take a lot longer than usual. That ends today's class. Stick with it. Meditation takes a lot of effort, but the benefits are well worth it.